The Ambassador of the Epitaphs, 13th of July, 1951. I do not know what is going on in Spain, with its solemn bell tolls, cloaked men, pale and thin people, burials galore, and a plethora of rosaries in the hands of women. The country makes you feel like you're ready to die. Franco's somber Spain, with its priests, soldiers, and mourning, seems like a waiting room for death. It doesn't take much to imagine the Grim Reaper's nurse opening the door and muttering in a cavernous voice, pointing to the first in turn, "Come in." The U.S. Ambassador to Spain, Stanton Griffis, who comes from a strong, cheerful, and athletic country after only a few months in Spain, had not only stopped smiling and lost that ruddy complexion that characterizes most U.S. businessmen, but he also had started thinking of his death and of the epitaphs that should be placed on his grave. In short, the ambassador was more dead than alive, at least spiritually. And so, at a banquet organized in his honor by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Spain, believing himself to be little less than in the anteroom of the afterlife, the ambassador, without any qualms, totally lost, spoke of epitaphs. "When I came here to Spain," said in his speech with a veiled voice, "I asked my son that if I died, to put the following epitaph on my grave. Here lies a man who wanted to help Spain advance quickly." Clearly, Stanton Griffis, as a good American, had the speed obsession. He wanted Spain to move faster. He did not realize that Franco's Spain doesn't go anywhere. Besides that, it would be completely anachronistic to make Spain advance, when the Catholic monarchs are its ideal. In their times, nobody hasted. Only the Mohammedans ran like the devil when chased by the soldiers of the Reconquest and the clerks of the Holy Office. The U.S. ambassador's speedy enthusiasm was out of place, as if Velazquez, the Spanish ambassador to the United States, wished for Americans to go to coffee shops and waste time chatting for hours and playing board games like dominoes. After a few months in the peninsula, Mr. Stanton Griffis realized that pro-Franco Spaniards were not people to be hurried, not even if kicked. He had to resign himself to abandon the chosen epitaph and find a more appropriate one. He continued nonetheless, worried about death, and started thinking of words on tombs. Poor Griffis. Even if he did not want to, even when he would leave the embassy full of optimism, humming Some Enchanting Evening, he had not even walked 2 steps, and then, bang, he would run into a priest with his black cassock and his pale face. Soon after, 3 had already passed by his side. Nobody told him to make a knot on his handkerchief to be on the safe side, just in case of any spells. Therefore, the distinguished diplomat felt immersed in a mist of sorrow, accentuated by the number of women he crossed, all dressed in black, wearing dark headscarves, sad and emaciated. Goodbye to the enchanting evening. He embraced thoughts about epitaphs. At last, he came up with one, which will not make him famous in life or after death. He reviewed it in the banquet. "Afterwards, I told my son that I might add, 'Here lies a man who wanted to rush the United States.'" He was still obsessing about the haste. Already a little delirious, he did not only want Spain to rush, a country where only bulls and soccer players run, but to rush the United States, his own homeland, a homeland that has already broken speed records in every respect. Hurry for what? He did not say, because diplomats tend not to give statements but insinuate them, so they can always retract it later, if necessary. But Araujo and other leaders of the Franco government in the banquet understood that the rush was so that the United States would give the money to Franco Spain, needed to perpetuate the regime. With the idea of death perennial in his imagination, Stanton Griffis had become so confused that instead of being the U.S. ambassador, he seemed rather Franco's ambassador, and, at a long distance and forming a duet with Velazquez, he was begging for dollars for Spain. He even talked about how much he loved Spain. Poor dear Griffis, short only of publicly asking to be buried in El Escorial,